Thanks for coming. We're going to talk a bit about a program called the Buckeye ISA. ISA stands for Institution Supported Agriculture. You'll see in a minute why we chose that name. So what we're going to do is start with a little introduction to the program. I'll talk about where it came from. And then we'll play some videos that give you some a view of the program through a number of the participants' eyes. We have two of the our community liaisons with us here that are going to share some of their thoughts, and we'll kind of go around table and share some of our experience with the program, and then we want to open it up and talk about how you might be able to do something similar where you live, and how you might use the power of institutional purchasing to get production going, help communities with resilience and with solving some of the pressing issues of food security and in our communities. So does that sound like a good plan? Sound like what you're here for? All right. So we'll do a quick round of introductions first. I think I'm Casey Hoy. I'm a former faculty member of Ohio State University. I retired at the end of December. And I'm still a professor emeritus of entomology, but I was the project director for this project. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Casey. So I'm Tom Redfern. I'm the Director of Sustainable Agriculture for Rural Action. Our headquarters is in the Plains, Ohio, but we work throughout Appalachian, Ohio on different community development programming areas. And I focus on the agriculture side.
Good afternoon. I'm Minister Aaron Hopkins, Family Missionary Baptist Church, and Southside Family Farms. I am a visionary farmer, kind of inspirer of a community on the South Side. Operating a couple civic levels of area commissioner on the Columbus South Side for religious and social services, and also civic president for Southside Community Action Network. It's a resident community which I've lived there for 30 years in that community. So we start out addressing food insecurities and just helping to overcome barriers for the seniors that live in our community and the chronic health diseases, and just trying to open up some different avenues of economics through education and empowerment.
My name is Jade Lantz. I am the program assistant for the Buckeye ISA project, and I've been working with this program for about a year and a couple months now.
And last but not least, on the small screen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Leighty, and I'm one of the community liaisons for the Buckeye ISA program in the south part of Columbus. I work very closely with my dear friend, Minister Aaron Hopkins and Southside Family Farms. I've been doing community work for about 30 years and some work with food entrepreneurs and some other food-related projects. And when this project came up, I just loved the idea of getting involved, and happy to be here today. I'm happy to virtually be there with you. Greetings from Clarksburg, West Virginia.
Oh,
Thanks, Bob. Why don't I, just to simplify things, go right into some of the videos that were done by a group that we work with called
Video Stories.
Video Story Studio. Thank you. And we got them engaged to tell a little bit of the story of the program. So I'll play a few of these. This one is the program overview, and this gives you an idea of what it was about in the words of all the people that were involved.
The Buckeye ISA program is a program that provides families in low-income areas with children under the age of 8 with all of the training resources and material resources that they need to grow their own food. And with the surplus produce that they grow, this program offers the opportunity for Ohio State University to buy any surplus produce, hence the name institution supporting agriculture.
The Buckeye ISA started on a grant from the Kellogg Foundation. The Ohio State University is a great place to start an initiative like this because it's an urban land grant university surrounded by economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. So what better place to carry out the land grant mission than the neighborhoods that are literally the university's neighbors?
We didn't spend a dime the first year of the project, and intentionally we wanted to see what the community partners needed and what they really needed to understand and how to make it easier for us to work with Ohio State Dining. How do we really write in a full planning? Because it takes a long time for the seeds to go on the ground, harvest them, and get them to market.
There's no playbook for a program like this, so we didn't really have a template to follow, and we were really creating it as we went along. We started the project with some stakeholder meetings and brought in a lot of our community partners to figure out exactly how we wanted to implement the program. And we found that the best way really to form those community partnerships and work within the communities was to partner with existing organizations that already had relationships with the communities that we wanted to recruit to be a part of the program.
Our responsibility was to, number one, recruit families for this project. So that was number one, get the families in, get them to fill out the paperwork to be registered for the event, host the workshops for the newbies, who know nothing about gardening, who don't even know what a seed looks like, or the very master gardeners, just give them some tips and some reminders, and then just have an environment where they could share across the board with their experience.
The Kellogg Foundation was interested in looking at the health benefits, specifically for children, of growing their own food. So we worked with Nationwide Children's Hospital to look at the biometrics of families before they started growing their own food, and then after the program to see just your own food and then increasing consumption of fresh produce in the home.
We're very excited to see the findings of the study. We've been able to collect measurements of the last 2 or 3 years, and so we're excited to see what kind of changes people have been able to make.
Growing a garden made me feel just more content and at peace and at all with the process, and it really slowed me down in a healthy way. We're so busy in society these days that it just made me appreciate even the smallest things and just the fact of the miracle of a seed.
One other innovation that was the result of this program was the partnership between the Ohio State Department of Engineering and Education and some of our participant households and community liaisons. They had students from that department build a farm plot, and that connection really only took place because of the Buckeye ISA program.
My classmates and I designed a rainwater catchment system. We did this like under the direction of Paula, and one thing they wanted is they were losing their water source. So we wanted to give them a way where they could use what they already have to provide an alternative water source and just keep that water from running off.
The farm bot and the solar powering instrumentation and the hydroponics. And so that piece, along with just being their engagement in this space and their engagement with the children who come to this space, is really priceless. It's really priceless.
I think having this garden here is very instrumental in uplifting this community that is very much in transformation, a place where we can come and we can grow, cook, eat, and conversate together, and helping people to move past those barriers and tear down some of the negative paradigms that exist.
What I'd really like to see happen after the grant, the current grant is up, is that folks recognize they have a reason to be working together, a reason to stay in relationship and keep building a very positive steps out of a cycle of poverty that you see sometimes in these neighborhoods that'll help them grow for future generations.
We would love to see other communities and institutions take up the charge and duplicate this program in their communities.
So we'll come back to that last bit in the end, how others might be able to start something like this. Let's drill down into just a couple more of those videos.
On every vacation,
Not on vacation. Just stop sharing for a sec. Now where did it go? Okay, bear with me for just 1 sec. Find the other videos. They're all the way at the bottom of this page, I think. Just play them. Okay, that one's student involvement. So let's talk about, since this is the Sustainable Agriculture Education Association, let's talk about student involvement. Before I do that, I got to go back to sharing screen.
So you want to share right there?
Since we're done.
We have the pleasure of having OSU students involved. Dr. Wendy Rooster, I'm going to give her credit for her horticulture and crop science class, silver student class, who I had disinherited the Shepherd Garden. She just had a class that needed a garden for service, and it was a perfect match.
Because of the Buckeye ISA program, Paula and all of the families who work at her garden every week were able to connect with Ohio State Department of Engineering and Education students. And then we're also able to get real world experience and this connection to the local community. That really benefits both sides of that partnership.
The LSU students who are involved have been involved in the garden for the last 4.5 years, and they have helped with everything from the baseline issues of planting, weeding, watering, harvesting. They've also been very much involved in the high-tech aspects of this garden. So the farm bot, the hydroponics, the solar power that drives all of these things. And then they've also been a vital aspect of the linkage between the garden and the community it serves.
But I feel like it's definitely been like a really big learning experience for me and different than a lot of my other like engineering classes, which I feel like has helped me sort of like determine where I was going with my education.
In the 3 years I've been teaching this class, I've had students tell me that this has changed their lives. And I think they mean that from a perspective of I now see how I can engage with community. I now see that even if my career isn't centered around community advocacy, that I can find pathways to make this happen in my life. I think it's opened the world of food insecurity and the world of community social justice to students like nothing they've experienced at OSU. And more things like this just have to exist. There's no reason it can't. And it's just a mutually beneficial situation where students can learn, be inspired. I can get paid to teach my class, and OSU benefits because this is just such a good story.
All right, just one more. That was the university education angle. There was also educating through our partners like
the original goal of the Buckeye ISA program was to teach families with children here in the economically challenged neighborhoods of central Ohio how to grow their own food, with a secondary goal that if they wanted to, once they learned how to grow, that there would be an aggregate of that produce that then we could sell back to the Ohio State University. So when we talk about the Buckeye ISA, the ISA is institutional supported agriculture. We have a number of places that growers can sell, but it can be difficult and it's a little fragmented and there's really no guidance, especially for a new grower. And so for the university to step up to the plate and say, I'm going to buy Buckeye ISA local produce and sell it into a dining hall. And that was a bit of a game changer for us. The educational program had a teacher in extension, but there was no curriculum at this point. That service present. And so when I came into the Buckeye ISA, I went to the community liaisons and said, you know, you are going to be the most important people here, right? Because you're the ones in the community. These are your neighbors. This is your neighborhood. I want to be respectful of that. I need to be a guest in here. So let me know what we want to teach them. So everything was needs assessment driven. We would sit down with the community liaison, the families and say, and the overwhelming sentiment that we got was we were going to have a bunch of complete beginners that wanted to learn how to grow their own food.
We did have Tim teach quite a few classes. My first year of doing the ISA program, I focused a lot on education. I think that people gain confidence when they participated in classes. They learned things that would have been maybe difficult to learn from the internet because they were able to get feedback and ask their specific questions.
There was a lot of topics that we needed to cover to get a beginner gardener to at least intermediate. And we're talking about garden planting in the spring. We're talking about seed starting, transplanting, container gardening, integrated pest management, tomatoes 101, composting, pollinators, how to use season extension. Pretty much everything from soup and nuts spring all the way into spring. So one of the things that I tried to do to make sure that I was inclusive and tried to mitigate the barriers that a lot of these families would encounter, I didn't bring facility on campus to teach. I went out into the community gardens and I would do the same class 3 times in a week. And that way everybody had an opportunity to attend and most people really didn't have to drive very far. Plus I told them, bring your kids, we're going to be gardening, it's going to be fun.
Having experience with our children as a homeschool project and just learning about good food and nutrition as a whole anyway was very important to us. So just, it was a blessing to be a part of the program to have this opportunity.
It was fun to have the kids get involved as well for them to learn and grow off of that. That made a big difference. And I gave us more to add on to, you know, learning and all the wonderful insects they bring to the garden. So it was a nice experience, actually.
All right. So all of these YouTube videos, by the way, are on the Agro-Ecosystems Management Program webpage, and that's amp.osu.edu. So we'll let you look at the rest of those on your own and go on with just a real quick review of just where this came from. And then we'll share some of the impacts. Discussion. So it really started, we already pointed out, it was a grant from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Kellogg had an investment at Ohio State for quite a while. We started a program back in the 90s called the Agro-Ecosystems Management Program, which was very much about sustainable agriculture, balancing the economic, environmental, and social dimensions, and working with people in agriculture at all kinds of different scales. In Ohio, that program was very connected. It was very network oriented. We built a fairly large network over the years, probably over a couple of decades, which led to the Initiative for Food and Agricultural Transformation at Ohio State, which was a very broad and comprehensive food security initiative. That was exactly the kind of change in universities that Kellogg Foundation was hoping they would see when they endowed the Agro-Ecosystems Management Program and programs like it across the United States. So when I, as the Kellogg chair, went back to Kellogg and said, okay, this is working. We're changing the university. We're now working together at much broader scales. Is this really where you want to pull back, or do you want to invest a bit more? And that's when the program officer at the time, Livia Marcus, got into conversation with us saying, well, we can't do anything major, but we do want to give you some support for a project that really does kind of represent what's been going on in these programs. And the two of us realized that there had not been a program quite like this. And Kellogg has funded a lot of this kind of work across the country. But Ohio State had just set as one of its sustainability goals, 40% locally and sustainably sourced food by 2025. And they head out there and put that out there. Probably the people that approved it and put it on the webpage had no idea what they were really talking about there and how difficult that actually was. But it's pointing a lot of economic opportunity at Central Ohio, near Ohio State. So that was the rationale in talking to Kellogg for, well, we can channel that economic opportunity into neighborhoods that could use some economic opportunity. And they're talking about buying food locally. That's kind of a different way of approaching folks in these communities. It's not just, you know, we think you should grow stuff because it'd be good for you. It's if you can produce these things, we'll buy it from you. And by the way, you'll have, you know, more fresh produce that you can use in the home as well. And that was kind of a different way of approaching it with neighborhoods. So we got the grant from Kellogg, got started, got out into the way these sometimes work. The Kellogg program officer told me on Friday, okay, we want to fund this. I need a proposal Monday morning. So it's now Friday, we've got 48 hours to come up with a proposal, right? So we have no time to go out and engage folks like Tom and Aaron and all the folks that we really need to engage in the communities to do this. So that's why you heard that one comment, we didn't spend anything for the entire first year. We spent that entire first year building the relationships with the people in the community that were already doing this kind of work, which the folks at the table here are examples. Paula Pan Neighborhood is another one who you saw on the screen. And there are several others that you also saw that we're already out there doing this kind of work. And so we decided, you know, we really should be working with those folks to put this program into place. And it took a year or so to work out how can we do that well and get the grant kind of into the hands of people that are in the communities that can make this work. So that's kind of how the whole thing started up. And here are some of the impacts. Jade?
So our final year of the program of 2021, we created a new deliverable, which was called the produce distribution form. So the data is not totally comprehensive for the entirety of the program, but from what we were able to collect on these forms, we found that 2,178 pounds of produce were sold or donated from ISA families, serving a total of 5,474 people. I guess that number of people was from a few forms before 2021, but you know, again, the data is a little incomplete, but that's still an impressive number of people. They also sold or donated produce to 23 different food outlets, including stores, produce auctions, food pantries, and more. And before COVID sort of shut down the option to sell at OSU, the Traditions at Scott Dining Hall purchased 1,452 pounds of produce from ISA households, and they earned a total of $2,535 from those sales. In total, from what we were able to get from these distribution event forms, we found that $18,218 were earned from produce sales by ISA families. And yeah, that's the produce distribution facts anyway. Next slide.
Yeah, just there, you tap the screen all the way over, well, up top. Yeah, up top, the very top.
Sorry. So we also found that the
It's not connected.
Gardening throughout this program was a really important way for people in the program to reduce stress, both economic stress, social stress, psychological stress during the pandemic. There was really impressive impacts that people reported from being able to garden during that time when indoor activities were obviously highly restricted. And it was also reported that people improved their relationships with their neighbors. Like we said, 5,000 people were served, and a lot of that was just through community donations, people giving their surplus produce to their neighbors. So it improved relationships within communities, and it also improved people's self-confidence, being able to learn how to do something and see the results of it in your garden.
and also being able to benefit in health aspects as well, eating more fresh produce.
Cool. More.
Yeah, or yeah. And finally, through leveraging participation in the Buckeye ISA project, our community partners such as Southside Family Farms, Rural Action, A&L Literacy Academy, and all of our other partners were able to earn over $780,000 in government funding, $269,000 in additional grants, and $75,000 in in-kind services, like the assistance from the engineering department at OSU and other collaborations. And that was just in 2021. Participants also grew on average 18% of the fresh produce consumed in their home. Some even produced 100% according to the surveys we received, but 18, that was the average. And 96% of households in the program said that they plan to continue gardening after grant funding ends. And we also asked about skill level improvement, and 100% of participants either already rated themselves at the highest level and stayed at that level, or improved 1 or 2 levels of gardening skill based on the sort of like rubric that we presented them with. Yeah. Oh, and that was largely due to the 75 different educational workshops that OSU Extension provided.
All right, so that's a little bit of background and what the program was about. Forward. There. Back to zone. Yeah, I'm just trying to stop sharing the screen. Hey, Bob, are you still there?
I am still here.
And what are you seeing here?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint slide for AMP and in fact, the first slide.
Still see the PowerPoint slide.
You have to get the Zoom and stop. While we're playing around with this, what questions do you guys have right off the bat that we should address first? So Jade, you want to take the questions?
Do you have any plans for follow-up on those households when you ask them if they're going to continue gardening? Do you have any plans for follow-up to see if they actually do, or they're years out?
I guess we hadn't really thought of doing that, but I would love to. We had our liaisons give the surveys to all the households that they worked with, and then the households just gave them back. So it would be pretty simple for us to do a follow-up survey. And I would love to see the data, especially, I don't know, people's lives get busy. It is sometimes expensive to get all the supplies you need, so I would be interested to see what people are doing and if there's anything I can do in the sort of iteration of the program that's currently underway that can help them garden if they're.
Do you see the YouTube channel, Bob? Mr. Bob?
I'm sorry, what was, I was having a little bit of trouble hearing there.
What are you seeing the YouTube channel right now?
I'm still seeing that first slide there from Casey's screen.
Let's close power.
But I'm happy to respond to the question. Maybe if you could repeat it, please.
Since this project.
Yes, so it wasn't that like we as Buckeye ISA support that funding, but for example, like Southside Family Farms has granted their own, Rural Action has granted their own. So it was our partner organizations all combined what they have.
So at the moment there, so what is the, so just to clarify, the folks participating in this program now are not necessarily continuing the same fashion. Some are with their own funding, but what is all of this?
So it is very, I work
Yay.
with
That's better, at least for me.
like I work with Southside Family Farms a lot to help do some research on grants that are available. Some of our liaisons, so the community liaisons are who I primarily work with, and they sort of relay all of the support I can give back to their households. It was just a way of sort of making the households feel more like trusting of the university and having someone who's like dedicated to them, whereas like I'm just one person at OSU. There were only like 3 people on the ISA team from OSU, so the liaisons are really the ones who did a lot of this work. So anyway, some of the liaisons are busier than others with their own stuff. Like I know Rural Action, they're a really well-established organization that has plenty of programs, whereas like for example, A&L Literacy Plus Institute was one of our other liaison organizations, and they do a lot of stuff with community gardening that still, I guess, had a place for Buckeye ISA support. So, you know, I connected her with like a capstone class to help with the garden coaching program she was trying to start. So it's sort of varied, the level of involvement that I have now with our different partners. But yeah, in short, my job now is like to find resources at the university, whether that's funding, student clubs that I can connect people with, stuff outside of the university, mostly funding as well still. Just to, whatever people's goals are growing, I want to make sure that they have the resources to do that beyond my job appointment at OSU.
Yeah, having Jade, access to Jade for this year has been very helpful. I can't say enough about how useful it is having a point person within OSU who understands the program in a lot of different contexts to be able to bounce ideas off of and help, you know, find out what groups we should talk to and what shouldn't. Because from the very beginning, for me personally, I remember going up when we were first talking about doing this, I remember going up to Worcester to meet with Casey. I was trying to figure out, is this a worthwhile thing? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're coming in fine.
Something can switch it over.
Bob?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, you can continue.
Okay. So anyway, I remember going up to Worcester to meet with Casey.
Time that an alternate host, so we don't.
And to talk about essentially, you know, how's this going to work? Are we going to have just a number of families growing zucchini in their backyards and selling to OSU? You know, there are a lot of complexities to this. And I came away from, you know, spending that day up there with the feeling that this is a really cool program that's being supportive. It's supportive of OSU's goals. It's supportive of our neighborhood goals, our community goals, our urban farming goals. And we're going to explore some things and see what works and what doesn't, and to try to build on that. And that's what's been happening. I mean, for me, I knew early on with my community work, and I've been involved in a couple other projects, but I've become friends over the years with Minister Aaron, and I became aware of his goals with the Southside Family Farms, and he was working on 2 different land bank sites at that point when we started. And I thought, well, hey, you know, I want to work with individual families, but it would be very helpful to have a place where some of those families may produce in their backyards, but others, you know, if you could have a central place, that's a place where Tim McDermott from OSU Extension can do his garden walks. It's a central place where you can meet and interact with other people and help spread the word on this. So the more we thought about it, I thought, if I can help Minister Aaron build his capacity within the neighborhood for the Southside Family Farms, this could be really awesome. And that's what we started working on. And so it was a mixture of actually some financial help related to, the high tower and, or, high tunnel and I don't know where a high tower came from, high tunnel and things like that, to the connection with Chris Radcliffe, the OSU engineering professor. That was a godsend, because, you get a big high tunnel set up, and the critical thing there is climate control. So we have his engineering students working on a system with sensors that will help control the walls moving up and down, as well as irrigation in there. And, what a help that will be, especially with Ohio having, a fairly short growing season. With a high tunnel like that up and running successfully, and climate control, you can just do so much more. So it's been good, and we've been trying to sort of keep those relationships going post the ISA formal program, and that's something I'm certainly very dedicated to continuing going forward.
I was busy with this. Are we still getting the question?
I guess that was a long answer to the last question. So yeah.
So additional questions that you have before we?
I heard some also about community liaisons. Have any of the participants expressed interest in market avenue outside of the ISA, that's building their own markets or going to market?
It probably depends on it's like our perspective. So rural action, hence the name, is like the rural partner, which was a great thing for us, because many of the problems like high poverty rates, drug addiction, food deserts are shared by urban and rural. So we welcome it. But our producers, like, we already have a food hub in place, the Chesterfield Food Shelter. Pre-COVID, we did do outreach to other families outside of that a lot, and we're bringing people in. Thing to remember, all this really got blown up by 2020. But Rural Action had a farm to institution program over. We are located real close to Ohio University. So for years, we were trying to build the aggregation, plus the distribution, plus the food safety to serve that market, because it's the, same thing with Ohio State. You have all that wealth, but surrounded by poverty. So how can we use that as an economic driver to our producers? Just that's various market outlets like we did, for 2020, the whole idea of contactless produce distribution really took off. But because we have produce vehicles, old customer base.
So to that question, yes, Southside Family Farms has went about to establish its own markets. We have developed a web page that has a interactive, people can go on there and purchase a CSA style product. We call it a produce package program, where they can pay a reoccurring payment of $25, for a CSA style, instead of paying an upfront amount for a CSA, community supported agriculture. And it also allowed us to reach the homes where people may have had SNAP benefits, that they could likewise request a box and then we set up a aggregation distributions place where it's currently under under development. We have a farm stand that we are getting cold storage that on 2 days out of the week, we will be set up there and that residents can pick up their produce box there. And also having a lot of the same ISA youth that participated in the program that are still active are actively distributing those boxes to the seniors that are not able, that have other barriers of transportation. They're delivering them to them. Another market that has presented itself is through City Council and some other collaborators with Kroger and Kroger. I think it's Ohio Farmers Market Network, and created a program called Farm Share. That SHARE is an acronym for like sustaining health and racial equity. Yes, and so it puts support around our organization as a producer, and then also as a host site. And so this is the third season. It started out as a pilot. And so I believe they have adopted it and got funded again this year through City Council. It has been great to help us, it is added income that comes in and helps us bring some sustainability to the organization to help us do other things. So yes, creating another market, it has opened up doors to other markets where we are still building. And
I would like to point out that the rural action families and South Side Family Farms are more of exceptions than to the average ISA participating household. So most of them just have a simple raised bed or maybe even a full backyard garden, but weren't really interested in selling opportunities as much as they were just growing for themselves, their families, and their neighbors.
if I could say that for the first 5 years that we have been we're established, we gave away everything in the community. And that was about the time that ISA came along and put support and provided assistance in education and helped bringing in other families that wanted to grow. So we grew in one site and then also encouraged them to grow at home. And so, yeah, it allowed something really great to happen, and residents started wanting to produce more. And so we had to expand even into a rural area. So we now are farming on three acres in Johnstown. About an acre and a half of it is planted, but we're doing season extension and market crops out there.
Do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, I apologize for disappearing for a moment there. My internet crashed. So I'm back and hopefully staying this time. What was the core of the question? I mean, I've heard Jade talking to Minister Aaron just now, talking about some of the growth over time.
I think the main question was that were some of the participants looking for other markets besides?
No. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's interesting because different people have different concerns and interest. And I know with the timing of COVID, it just it messed us up for the OSU option, but we started looking at other things. The farm share program has been very, very helpful. Some people were just giving away the produce, and such, but the farmers market in Whitehall has been very helpful. And we're in our second year of doing that. And, we're looking at other avenues. We got some funding from the city to build a farm stand, which will be a place where we're actually going to be selling the CSA boxes in the neighborhood. So that's a cool thing. It's releasing some land from the Donato's pizza company who their first store was on that site. So it's sort of a cool place to be doing something. I think, one of my interests personally, just throwing this out there, is to try to recoup maybe some of the lost time from the COVID. We're still interested in pursuing things with LSU if we can make the right connections in terms of some sales, and trying again potentially with the dining hall and such. So we'll have to see where that goes. But certainly the interest is there. The interest is there.
Yeah, I'll just reflect that we had questions right off the bat about, well, if we're going to sell, do we have to sell to Ohio State? And the answer from the start was no. If you find another market, go for it. We're about supporting the families and doing what's best for them. And if they can find a different way of selling it, that's just fine. We're just saying, if you produce this stuff, Ohio State will buy it. Ohio State did set a price, and we did have a business team that were working directly with dining on the contracts and what it would take to actually sell to Ohio State. We also charge them with, don't stop at Ohio State. There's plenty of other institutions to explore other opportunities. And one other thing I'll say is this: when the pandemic hit, Tom's absolutely right. That had an impact. Ohio State dining shut down, so they didn't really have a reason or capacity to buy at that point. And I was really impressed with how quickly the folks that were producing kind of came around to, it's more important to me to take care of my neighborhood and my neighbors than about selling stuff if I improve it. So very impressed with that.
Yeah, we definitely want to and definitely want to continue selling into the neighborhood and being at farmers markets and things like that. I'm hopeful. The whole concept of institution local procurement is an interesting one. It is not a simple thing to sell to an Ohio State, nor is it a simple thing to sell to a Nationwide Children's Hospital or any other large institution, but we have a number of them. And I think if we can get folks like as was happening in Ohio State, folks who are willing to work with us to experiment on a smaller piece of the puzzle initially, like a dining hall, and get a method that works for serving that dining hall, then you can start looking at, well, if we can do one dining hall, maybe we can do two. And then you start trying to figure out how we can help folks to scale up in a way that is doable. And that's a big piece of what we've been working on with Southside Family Farms, is figure out how to give Minister Aaron more capacity. We've added a couple of VISTA workers this year. We're partnering with Lutheran Social Services on some stuff. We need to make sure that we have enough people to do some of these grand things that we want to do, and being able to scale up ourselves a bit can help us meet the needs maybe of some of these institutions. And there are a bunch of them in Columbus, both in the public, private sectors, I think, who would be very interested in having this kind of produce or value-added foods as well down the road. We're exploring that too.
If I could even speak to another big market that's right in our community. So Bob mentioned Nationwide Children's Hospital that has been a supporter of Southside Family Farms. And what we're doing is, because of my civic role and then living in that community for that amount of time, South High School, one of the major high schools, is just 5 blocks from where our garden sits. And so a lot of the students live right in the community. They're walking past the gardens. And so we've established a relationship with South High School and with Moeller Elementary. They established safe streets. A lot of the young people are walking to that elementary. These are the same ones that live in our community. And so that farm school, and have, I participate in those conversations. I'm like, well, hey, here's a market right here. Is if we can begin to partner with the school to start educating these youth right in the community, that, hey, when they leave school, farming and learning about it at school, hey, when they want to come home and demonstrate to mom and dad, this is what we learned, they can do it right there at the garden, and then also in their own homes, but we wanted to provide that mechanism that they could do that. And so we are still in those conversations, and because it is now a curriculum that has to be implemented in Columbus City schools. We are looking at that as a market, but you know, I heard they do 30,000 meals a day in Columbus City School, and like, can you grow that much? And I'm like, as a collaborative group of urban farmers, we are talking about trying to reach that level where we can get something, if it's individually into that school, but we understand that there's some larger farmers that have those contracts, but it comes down to some policy and, you know, what can we do to affect policy to be able to get these small producers getting a piece of that where they can locally source right into the school system.
I think, and one of the things that the Buckeye ISA has done has encouraged us to work with fellow urban farmers or rural farmers. I mean, I don't want to leave rural action out of this. And but there are a number of great folks out there, like in Franklin Farms and Paula Neighborhood's farms, and you know, and others. And when you start looking at those issues of what's needed for scale, that's where the collaborations can become more useful. And then you start exploring maybe grants and ways to funding and help build this. And you're really talking economic development for people who live in the neighborhoods if you do this thoughtfully. And that's the approach we're trying to take. And we're trying to also just make sure we teach the youth in particular, but how to be entrepreneurial, and whether it's growing your own produce and selling it, or whether it's doing something else. But how can you be responsible, you know, adult in the neighborhood and support your family, and you know, be sustainable, you know, that kind of thing. And these are positive options. We also have some challenges in our neighborhood because while Columbus overall, the economic climate is very strong, but we have these longtime pockets of poverty, especially in some of the minority dominated neighborhoods. And with the history of redlining and various things, that is a whole nother topic. But we have some areas that it's been tough to reach out to folks when the poverty, and we're convinced that the schools and places like that are great places to do it. And if we can show, and if we can also show, expose some of the young people, like in, say, South High School, you know, we have had 4 presentations this past year to 8th graders in South High School. And if we can have them maybe meet some of OSU's engineering students and see some of the things that are possible, you know, you're doing engineering, you know, and you're doing that supporting food. How does that work? How does that, I could do that and support my family. And those are great things to learn. You know, that big campus 15 minutes from here is not just football. There's a whole lot else going on there. And that's one of the things I like about this. This was a way to get OSU into the neighborhood and to encourage OSU partnerships.
Hope that wasn't too shocking, that it's not all just football.
Just to build on that real quick, like some people might have taken a field trip to ASTAT yesterday. So we partner with ASTAT, purchase in the summer, and then freeze the food at ASTAT, then bring the K through 12. It's a way you can get into that money. Think about that.
Yes, sir.
Yes. What we're doing this path.
The processing, you know, to serve an institutional market, you need processing, aggregation, distribution, plus production, plus food, plus.
You're witnessing some of the value of the network, right?
No.
And that was actually a conversation that I had even during our lunch, that there was someone at our table that's presenting right now on food systems. So while I think of food systems as being raised beds, irrigation, and some of the other components of a raised bed, she said, well, no, this is more in aggregation, processing, food safety, distribution. Who are all the other components of the food system to get it to marketing, all of those components. And so that was very good. And so that was very good. Thank you God for that.
And all those pieces could be local economic opportunities.
And that's where one of the things that we, when I first heard about Buckeye ISA, and Bob presented it to me about the goal of that 40 million and 39% locally sourced. Well, my statement is we only need 1 million or 1%, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
1%. And so I started thinking about the economics that was attached to that vision, that I could start telling young people, hey, you could be a farmer. You can have some acreage that you can begin to contribute, or you can drive the delivery truck. There's some component that you can have in there that begins to bring that resource to the community. And so we are still working towards that vision. And Bob has done a very good job of, just keeping us connected. Ms. Jade has been a wonderful component to help us. We are still working on that vision that was inspired by the work. It educated me, because I am not, I have any degrees in agriculture, but I learned a heck of a lot of stuff through Tim McDermott that you heard on there. And I remember the first season, how we did season extension, and we did low row covers and grew spinach and kale over winter. And it was unbelievable that we could do that. People say, you got what out there growing? And harvested in that spring, and were able to get it into neighbors' hands in the early spring.
I think one of the key words here that my colleagues have been bringing up is systems. And the more we have this kind of local growth of produce, you're helping you're helping a family and feed themselves. And that's like our partnership with Lutheran Social Services now. That's something, would it have happened without ISA? I don't know, but the fact that we were able to come to them and say, hey, we're working with Ohio State and we're doing this and that, and it helps give you credibility and it creates partnerships. And now we're developing a site. It's very exciting, but it's near one of the most established food pantries in town. And when you think about this and wanting to teach people how to grow food, what better place to promote that effort than at a food pantry? Because people are showing up and they're hungry, so they're getting something to eat, right away. But you also, when you go past that, right adjacent to that are places where people are growing their own. And we'll have classes there about, healthy eating and cooking and things. And it's a real opportunity. And it's an opportunity as you develop these kind of things to get people healthier and stronger and thinking more about the community where they live. And that's something I think that could have just a lot of benefits on various fronts. And you also have just sort of unexpected things. As we started thinking about this from an urban planning level, and I promise I won't go on too long here, but on an urban planning level within a neighborhood, one of the changes I've seen in the last 30 years has been, we still have a number of these pockets of poverty, but we've had enormous investments in the neighborhood and enormous growth, in our case, from the expansion of Nationwide Children's Hospital, which it's a wonderful thing. And there's all kind of research and people are building all over the place, but housing prices are soaring and people are starting to get displaced. And how do we help people stay if they want to stay? Well, one of the ways is to help them to be more effectively be able to feed themselves and their families and maybe make some money on the side. So it's thinking through that local thing. And I think we have an opportunity here with, like, for example, Southside Family Farms. And, we have these 2 sites on Wilson Avenue that we've been developing, but we didn't have signage on there telling people what this was about. We had like an ISA sign, and stuff, and we've had some things, but nothing really tying that together. So we created another partnership. And again, the ideas were all inspired by OSU, but we created another partnership with a local art school, Columbus College of Art and Design, and they're helping us figure out some wayfinding signage things that we can put together at our individual sites, like the new Lutheran Social Services one, like these 2 other Wilson Avenue ones, and even out in Johnstown, and and have a map and put some of this on our online systems. And it's a way of sort of showing within the neighborhood, this is the fabric of the neighborhood, and these are things that are worth investing in. And when you have these urban farming sites, you have people from various incomes and colors and just backgrounds coming together, literally, in a wonderful park-like setting over food and eating cherry tomatoes and stuff like that. So we see a lot of benefits on that, but we just have to make it economically viable for these efforts to literally grow. And part of that means being successful enough with the signage so people know what we're promoting. Part of it means being able to control the land. Some of these sites are currently still owned by the city. City might decide to build housing on them at some point. You know, we really need control of the land. I mean, all these kind of things to have long-term impact have been helped by, you know, OSU being a partner. So it's just, I can't say enough about how good the ISA program has been, you know, to us, and how good our relationships continue with OSU.
Are you getting the drift that people are pretty passionate about the work done? Well, what else can we share? Obviously, there's a lot there to share, but what other interests do you folks have that we can discuss for you? I'm looking at the questions that we had looked at before. We've done a pretty good job of answering most of them already, so you're asking a good question.
I have something that we should discuss, the process of aggregating and distributing food to OSU, which Tom had a big role in. If you would like to talk about that. Maybe?
Yeah, if people are interested. So basically, you know, someone has to set up a PO, a purchase order with the university. The rural action did that, and then we could pay. So we took our refrigerated vehicle with our stuff, because we have the stuff, but we would make stops to the partners up in Columbus, pick up what they have, take it to the university, which was easy with the food safety because they don't have strict restrictions like they do at OU, because they're not preparing it and shipping it across campus like they are at OU. So it's pretty easy access for us. All the farmers would have to be GAP certified to sell it, except maybe for catering or for on-storage. But the way the dining halls are all like making their own thing, and for some reason that makes it easier. So all we had to really do was show up with the truckload. It's all labeled, and each of the partners would have their own invoice, which we would then pay through our PO, our central PO, which made it easier for OU. Ohio State is not going to want to set up a PO for a couple hundred. So things like that, we were able to pool resources. So that's, and the thing is, it all had to be tracked back to the families who were the participants.
Tyree might be interested in this. We did hire a business student from the Fisher College of Business to develop a spreadsheet system, which we never really got complex enough that we had to use. But as it scaled up, I've worked with vegetable growers in the northern part of the state before. When they sell something, they're selling an area of field that hasn't been harvested yet. So they take the order, and then they know exactly where that's going to be cut, where it's going to be harvested. And of course, over time, they can back up, figure out what they have to plant where for a sale that's going to take place sometime in the future. And that's all just spreadsheet operations. And so we had it set up so that, you know, every one of these small scale producers could have their part of the spreadsheet and be filling in planning date, project forward into here's what's going to be available. So that when OSU is asking, you know, what do you have? We can just look right down the spreadsheet. Here's what's available. Here's how much we have of everything. And here's how it all gets sorted out and figure out how we're going to get it from point A to point B. But there's some of that background work that's already done as a.
And we already have some of that through our food produce auction, which basically has like market reports archived for like 10 years. So we can project what we had a year ago should be similar to what we have. Plus we have a seasonal chart. So there's resources you can share with your customers, even at a smaller scale versus the big growers like the celery that can. Because there's a lot of space which can be filled before you're at the big stage. There's a lot of room. Because the sad thing to remember is we're basically here in Ohio, we're probably purchasing like 5%
Yeah.
of our food locally.
Very,
That's
very consistent estimate, somewhere between 4 and 5% is where it keeps coming back. And actually, that's not unusual. You've got that same estimate for Sacramento, California, which is right in the middle of the salad bowl. And we're still only producing 4 or 5.
But there's really resilience issues with that.
Yep. As we saw.
As we're seeing.
Yep. Bill, you had a question?
Maybe it's not approved yet, I'll ask it later.
Okay.
To the point that Tom was making about access to spreadsheets, and so those are some of the things that we were also, because of the ISA relationship, there were some others that had been involved with INFACT and part of a microfarm project that is farming on the same property I am. Started adding that capacity to us to start doing produce like crop planting and you know, getting that, what are you going to have in your CSA and what week will it be available, crop rotation. We were starting to do all of that planning, and that person kind of transitioned out of Ohio State and into Ohio or Central State. So now I have a relationship where Central State is also working with us on helping to provide that and you know, providing that. And so there's some cross collaboration. And so it's really good to be, you know, in this room, in this space, and in these conversations, especially after going to ASMET yesterday. And I heard the name, you know, they spoke about the collaboration of Rural Action. And I asked the question, I said, is Rural Action close to here? They said, right down the street. So, oh, definitely. Yeah. And so I know that there's a lot of resources that are in place that sometimes we just not aware of them. And through conversations like this, you know, it's good because, you know, we're definitely pursuing, you know, some greater roles in the community and trying to change that 5%. And that's something. Just trying to reach these youth and trying to demonstrate more. I can keep talking now. that educational and just thinking about some of the other opportunities when I was speaking about school gardens and in relationship with the community and the Columbus City Schools. There is something that Columbus City Schools has in place now. It's called the Columbus Promise. And the Columbus Promise is if anyone graduates from Columbus City School, I think with like 2.8, I think is what it is, they would give them a 2-year full tuition paid for 2 years at Columbus State. And so, you know, we have started looking at what ways can Ohio State and Columbus State begin to talk together, you know, about what ag, you know, what curriculum is in place for ag for these 8th graders now. What are you teaching them about ag that even as they work towards being seniors, graduating in the community, and they're learning this stuff already, you know, we're exposing them to it, that they can begin to see those greater roles. And, you know, we do teach that it's not always hands in the soil, and that there's so much more to sustainable agriculture that they need to consider. And so, yeah, right now we have an 8-week program that City Council funded to let us develop 20 youth across the space of 4 urban agricultural, you know, farms. I think 2 of them, another one of them was one of the Buckeye ISA was involved with that, but we're developing 20 youth in agriculture. And it's not just, we tell them it's not just a summer job. You know, we are trying to develop urban farmers so that next season you'll be the mentors for the next, you know, you can tell them about your experiences and so on and so forth, that we can't build the relationships. Bob mentioned OSU engineering being a part. And so even as we're building that farm stand, it's got a 16 by 20 storage shelter. Well, it's going to need refrigeration. And so OSU engineering has some student involved people that are talking about building that refrigeration system, just to kind of leverage some of our funds on doing that. But there's, you know, so much that has to be considered in here. The logistics, you said logistics, but refrigeration vehicles. And that right now, that's a barrier for me right now in transporting produce from Johnstown to Columbus. And, you know, my wife who's here said, you know, you're not gonna keep bringing that home, put it in an icebox. You know, you got to be able to, you know, figure out some place, you know, so that's one of the things, even this season, so we're kind of behind on our storage. That's a challenge, although we do have storage in Johnstown, but to bring it home, to aggregate it, to get it to the farmer's market or get it ready for our CSA boxes, you know, so that's something that we're still working currently.
It's interesting because, you know, Columbus is a place that is well known, and OSU is for logistics expertise. And there's all kind of logistics involved in shipping things out of Rickenbacker and all over the world, and things with Amazon and all this stuff. But there's also a potential here with this whole other system infrastructure that we are trying to build sort of piece by piece here for local food. And I really think that a key is one of the things that Minister Aaron, he's so good at helping to reach out to folks to develop these programs with youth and with the young people. And there's surprising, not surprising, but there's a lot of support for that kind of thing from the city and from other entities, from Nationwide Children's Hospital, you know, and these things, a lot of them are about creating greater equity in terms of food, in terms of income. The Columbus Promise thing with the Columbus State is a huge opportunity. It's an opportunity with their ag program. I would toss in, they also have a great culinary program. That's involving food. You know, we should be looking at all different kind of options to help leverage, you know, programs that are coming out of the city or the Columbus Partnership or other places. And that's what we've tried to do. That's what OSU has helped to teach us. And we certainly want to continue with OSU. And just thrilled to be sitting here virtually sitting with Casey and and Jade and friends here.
I'm glad you're bringing up the leverage, because I mean, from the institutional side, this was a 3-year grant that was funded in fall of 2016. It's now 2022, and we still have Jade working on this project. So the reason it has lasted that long is because of leverage of the project all the way along within the project with, for example, the equipment budget that we had built in. We spent that much more slowly than we expected that we would, because Lowe's and a whole series of partners jumped in and said, we'll give you discounts. So it was not nearly as expensive as we thought it would. And that's just one example of, lots of ways that we were able to extend that budget by collaborating with the community. So even within the project, it's, we've been able to stretch that grant a whole lot further than we thought we might have. And then we also, as a group, said right off the bat, this is kind of the grub stake that you could now leverage for additional grants. The show of already having some support there, that's very important to grantees sometimes, to show that you've got something already started, and then they'll add on to it. So to be able to do some of that too.
Build out on the K-12. We have partners that do like first grade curriculum, second grade curriculum. And the thing is, you can match it with the core requirements that they have to learn. Like there could be geography lessons around food, all kinds of science around plants. The dream has always been like to take that cohort for the second graders and the first graders, see how you can give them some support on it. And right now we're doing like high school apprenticeships and farms to do that next level of the goal.
And then they wind up here.
Yes.
Or in Ohio.
Right. That's exactly what we're building for, is to open up those avenues into Ohio State and Central State. We have those right here, these land grant institutions that's very accessible to these homegrown young people. And even down into southern, southern Ohio.
It's real because the intern that we had last summer with our program, and stuff, she'll be beginning her second year at OSU in the ag school.
Wow.
Great.
It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
That actually happened.
Bill.
I understood you said that about 5%, 4 to 5% of the produce is sourced locally here in Columbus.
No, the 4 to 5% of our food bill in general is from local sources. 95% is coming from somewhere else.
That's all right. So 5% is local. Now, in reading some of the old books about urban potential, urban gardening, they were talking about urban areas having the potential of producing almost all of the produce locally. What do you see as the potential for the Columbus area in terms of overall production?
It'd be interesting to define that area too, if you took Franklin and Richland and some other counties.
And I think that ISA did have, I think it was within 120 miles of the campus.
Well,
what were you defining as local?
So that was the sustainability goal, Ohio State sustainability goal. And where we ended up was 250 miles, which is not a common one. You often see, you know, there's all kinds of definitions of what you call local. Everything from, you know, 50 miles to 100 miles, coming from the 100-mile diet to a day's drive and so on. The 250-mile has some cachet in some of the food safety regulations. So that is a limit that they use in some of those. So that's why we ended up deciding, okay, 200 miles. And from Columbus, that's basically Chicago to Philadelphia. Think of that radius. And that, you know, it's pretty consistent with a pretty straightforward one-day delivery. But we also looked at it as, you know, what we want to do is have it as close as possible. And kind of you get as much, satisfy as much of your needs as you can from as close as you can, and then work your way out. Because there are some things, obviously, bananas, top, people are not going to stop their eating that stuff, and that's going to come from farther away. But Brian Snyder, my partner in fact, the executive director, called it the Buckeye Bullseye. So 50 miles, 250 miles, North America, and then the rest of it, you know, would be the kind of gradations.
I mean, when you think about it, the potential of spending so much money on the transporting of food from the, you know, California and beyond, if you could have a local system set up where you know the transportation issues could be, you could have significant savings, you know, on that front, and especially if you start looking at exploring ways to do more hydroponics, aquaponics, stuff like that, that would extend the growing season. Because it's certainly, you know, it's one thing to say, you know, you can get all local, you know, produce from around Ohio for OSU, you know, during the warm months, but during the winter months, which is when actually most people are in school, you know, that's harder. But you know, as I think the potential as we start to explore, and it's one of the things that we're doing is looking at different building sites and thinking about the value added food possibilities as well, and trying to think through what else can we do in the urban core to create jobs and quality local food for people, and to keep the money and resources going to those families, as opposed to just going hundreds or thousands of miles away.
It's kind of tough to give a very straightforward answer to that question, because, you know, the question becomes, well, how could you redesign urban spaces to be more supportive of growing food? And I think Professor Lau last night said that, you know, that should be a design criteria for cities. You should be able to produce food in that city. That's not necessarily what planners have done in the past, but there's a growing emphasis in the planning, led by Samina Raja at the University of Buffalo, Flint, Michigan, and so on, to incorporate that into the design of cities, and that changes the amount. I would give you one example. I mean, when really pushed. So Victory Gardens, they did some estimates of, you know, what was that producing? It was something like 40% of the fresh fruits and vegetables overnight. So, you know, we know that people can, you know, if they really have to, can produce a whole lot more than what we're doing now.
I guess next steps in terms of the education that you're providing, like the health technical that kids that we ever get into such an urban like that? Is there just based on the community desire?
Question too. I guess from my perspective, from the perspective of the university, is we have degree programs, we have extension that can help with, you know, as specific questions come up, like aquaponics. We do have some folks that are working on that, and some folks in extension that can help with answering. Let me get started with that. But I think, you know, as you see, Buckeye ISA wasn't about all the university providing all the information. Also, you've seen it today. You know, the information is coming from each other. You know, I'll turn it over to these guys.
And so that work of teaching aquaponics and even discussing aquaculture has come up even out of on it. So you guys all see, maybe notice Chris Ratliff, the OSU engineering professor that spoke, that is working with our urban farms as part of, in fact, also. And so we have had them conversations through the engineering, you know, what can they provide? And so one of his student interns, or, you know, that's doing work over the summer, he's an ag engineer. And so they're helping us solve irrigation problems right now, but we've talked about what does it look like to have that tank. And so there are relationships with Central State that are in the inner city of Columbus right now that is doing aquaponics and teaching that. And so I know Tim McDermott in our ag, you know, in the classes and stuff, definitely talked to us about those sustainable models. That was a sustainable model for a community. And so there is the potential there. And so I myself with Bob, you know, working with Jade, we have definitely been trying to keep those conversations going with inside of AMP, and presenting to them and trying to answer the question, well, how can they be involved? And so we are saying those things like, here's a space where you can be involved. This is something, you know, because we definitely have to get these young people ready for this future of sustainable agriculture, growing their own food and sustaining their community. That's the one I look at: sustainable agriculture. How can agriculture help sustain this community? And so that's the perspective I have, and doing it in a sustainable way. And so I'm all about efficiencies. I ain't got time to get to rolling up a high tunnel. I can make it efficient, and press a button, look at the cell phone, and these young people are on that. And so it, you know, I remember when I came to Central State, there was someone here that's part of a program that's here, Edgemont, I believe it is, community in Dayton, and they were talking about a hydroponics or aquaculture that was a saltwater. No, there was aquaponics, but being a saltwater system. And he said it could be done, but you're gonna have to monitor it. A whole lot more. That system costs a whole lot more. But for a community where it's diverse, where you have people that do not eat bottom feeder, you know, and so you have to consider that in your community. And so that was the case. So we're glad to see that the universities, and we encourage that cross collaboration between the universities, and so, like I'll say again, even for the sustainable agricultural education, this conference to be with these two entities, it's a win-win for the ag community.
I think it, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to follow up in terms of political support for urban ag, and what is actually available now. Is there are the big gaps and needs? The farm bill's coming up soon. People are talking about it. Are there specific problems now that need to be addressed?
You want to take that?
You can go, but I have some thoughts.
We have taken steps. We have advocacy groups amongst the urban farmers right in Columbus and Franklin County that we are partnering. Even with Cincinnati, we had a group. They had a big conference, AgNor, I think is what it was called. And it was a day where we engaged the state legislators and their aides and having them conversations, being able to tell our story more, to advocate for our community and getting it before the people that need to hear it. But then with these young people that are graduating and coming up to age 18, they need to be informed about policy and the policy makers and things that, hey, you need to make sure you stay engaged and know what the issues is. And so I'll say that that's one of the main thing is, with the Farm Bill, are we educated enough to know what that supports? To know what all that supports. I was at the OVA conference and I said something about vertical gardening and hydroponics, and that started a whole new conversation.
Yeah.
That's not the wrong place to
I'm not that.
I think there are all kind of different levels of political support, to look at, and certainly at the Farm Bill, level, there's a great need for it. But I mean, for a lot of people, you look at some of the things going on in this country right now, and some of the stresses that we are having with inequity issues and all kind of other stuff, and you have people saying, well, what can you do? What can I do to help? Well, I think more and more we're trying to spread the word that this is something you can do to help. You can grow your own food. You can help your neighbor grow their own food. And these are things that incrementally, as you do this more, and you then get more partners like OSU, like Central State, at the table, like Nationwide Children's Hospital, at the table, it makes it easier to get that broader support and get people at the city and county level. And if you get people at the city and county level, all these different levels, and that makes it easier on the federal level. And I think we have politicians here who would be willing to support this stuff at higher levels if we can show the impact. And if we can show, there are a lot of people who talk about the challenges of equity in our area, and what could you do? And this is something we can do. It's definitely doable.
And to jump back in with the Farm Bill programs real quick, it's not just what's in the Farm Bill too, it's making sure that the practitioners of the Farm Bill, Farm Service Agency, et cetera, are in step in urban areas to do things like give people farm numbers, in our urban center, to really get that, be used to practicing in different.
I guess I'll add, it's not all federal level as well. At the local level, I think one of the advantages we had with this project is somewhere around 2015, Columbus came up with a local food action plan.
Yeah.
And this project addressed something like 9 of the points in the local food action plan. Out of, it was quite a few of the points that were in that plan that this project was addressing. And there were some things that were pretty important to this group also. The regulations around community gardens, where you're allowed to produce, land bank properties, all these kinds of things can help and provide, more access, more opportunity for group like this at very local scale. We should probably turn it to anybody want to do this at their institution? You're Ohio State.
We're involved.
Yeah. So Dave, what can this experience group do to help you with, how to get started or whatever question you have if you're going to move ahead at your institution?
What is your institution?
Provisionally Local Matters, which is a food education outreach nonprofit. I've only been working there for a few weeks, but I'm sure that
They were a Buckeye ISA partner.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
cool. I'm sure, like I was gonna say, I'm sure they'd love to hear about this, especially the curriculum that we're talking about. The outreach.
Jesse Hickman was
Yes.
a community liaison.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And we worked with Noreen.
Yeah,
Warnock.
I'm not sure if she's
on-
there anymore.
She used to be
She's
there. Is she still there?
They're the ones that's doing that advocacy is at Local Matters.
Gotcha.
Yeah. A lot of us know Local Matters folks. I mean, that's a wonderful organization.
I don't touch my ear. I mean, I think I love it. I love it. I don't work for this like as a fair education institution. But I can see us definitely like talking about this exact same platform with our institution.
Is there anything these guys could help with that resolving questions of how to get going?
Oh, I thought I go for everyone's contact.
Yeah, okay.
I know that we talked earlier about acquisition of data because I'm an economist, data analyst, stuff like that, as an agriculturalist as well. So a lot of this is like, I have a ton of questions about like, what kind of data do you have? What kind of data can you look at next to this? So outside of Local Matters, in terms of like some research or even taking the next step forward, I would say that the way you can help me is like, let's see data, let me work looking at the numbers and margins, stuff like that.
We're right in the same community, man. And so I didn't know if you were aware of that, but yeah, they're and we're looking to even have that relationship with Local Matters and as one of our markets. And so we have been talking about that, but very glad to share those data and work together to make sure that you're getting it.
Sure, absolutely. And I would love to be an advocate for Local Matters as well. If you guys need it. I don't know how much credence I have in their office, but I can certainly ask.
There are, I'll just give you one potential project. We're looking at the data. It's, you know, I mentioned it was a 3-year grant. So we're going to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour and selling $40 million of stuff to Ohio State University in 3 years. Yeah, right. I mean, we all knew that that wasn't going to happen, but it does take a while to get up and going and get from, you know, not really having the resources or wherewithal to do this to get to the point where you're not only producing enough for your family, but producing surplus that you can then sell. So looking at the pace of change across the years of the Buckeye ISA and kind of projecting that to what can you expect? Yeah, I mean, what you really have to build in is an idea of what that trajectory is going to be. Look at ways that you could accelerate it and things like that. I think it'd be valuable for others trying to do the same kind of thing.
Absolutely. The other concurrent statistics that I'm looking for that I don't know if you guys can collect, probably not, would be how your data concurrently matches to like time series crime and health data. I really want to see the relationship between that, if I can find a correlation.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking to that there is.
There's another partner that's there on the south side that has been working with Nationwide Children's through that collaborative, Southside Thrive Collaborative. That is one of the partners in the community. And I know they have worked with City Health. And so some of that data is available. Not sure how much we could say that this work we're doing has affected that. But just, we know that the data is out there about green spaces and how much time is spent in the garden. I know Penn State and I think Cornell both have presented at the We Did conference that's held at Franklin Park Conservatory, and they have presented data around, you know, the impact of these spaces in these urban communities.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I would say that you saw on one of the videos, Amrik Singh, Dr. Amrik Singh is with Nationwide Children's Hospital, and he was collecting some of these data for Buckeye ISA or for work that they're doing. They tend to define health very broadly. So it's kind of in all those ways, financial health, physical health, health of the neighborhood and so on. So there, he may already be doing some of these analyses, but that would be a good partner if you're interested in that kind of research.
Absolutely, I would love to, know how to sell that.
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest that we, it's about 5 minutes from when we're scheduled to end, but since some of you want to network a little bit and exchange like emails and things like that, and there's a break taking place downstairs, so if like we break a little bit early, you could actually get a cup of coffee and a cookie or whatever before the next session starts in here at 3:30. But thanks for coming. It's been great. And thanks to Bob, Tom, Mr. Aaron, Jade for sharing all of this. Good question.